Okay, we're off and running once again. You did get a break last week. You didn't have a video, so, feel lucky. No, I won't make this one twice as long as usual. Don't worry about that. I'm sitting here in front of my fireplace with the flames going, as you can see, because this is a stage prop. In a sense, it's partially setting, We've discussed the concept of setting, and so this is setting. It helps fit into the whole story, just as, when we talked about setting in Ind Af and to build a fire, and we've talked about setting in other stories since then. Well, I'm helping create a certain setting for you here tonight. This week's story that we're going to be writing about, well, I shouldn't say we're going to be writing about, you're going to be writing about, and I'm going to be reading about. Yeah, that's the way it works. And then, of course, I'll be writing responses to your writing, so therefore you might say I'm writing about it too. Okay, be that as it may. The name of the story is Young Goodman Brown, and it's written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Now, you've seen Nathaniel Hawthorne already, because Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote the story The Birthmark that we talked about, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And if you remember, that was a rather intense story, okay? Well, that's Nathaniel Hawthorne. He doesn't write comedies. In general, he doesn't write things that make you feel good, but he does write things that get inside of you, inside of your head, inside of your heart, inside of your soul, okay? That's what Hawthorne is all about. He wants to get inside of your soul and inside the soul of mankind. Now, in Young Goodman Brown, Hawthorne centers this in Puritan Salem, Massachusetts, okay? And we all know Salem, Massachusetts. I wrote about it a good deal in this week's lesson, so make sure that you read that lesson. This is a very intense story, and it's important that you understand some of the background of it and some of the background of Nathaniel Hawthorne. Okay? Hawthorne grew up in Salem, Massachusetts. Yeah, he was born in 1804, and the witch trials were 1692. But I have to tell you, having been to Salem, even now, just the aura hanging over that town bears the feeling of shame and guilt from what happened there in 1692. So you know the stories of the witches' trials, or you know some of the stories. I detail some of that out in the notes for this week's lesson. In case you aren't really familiar with them, I give you some background on them, okay? People kind of went crazy over this witchcraft thing, but keep in mind, we're dealing with people from the 1600s. They were not dumb people. They could read and write, but the world of knowledge was so much smaller then, They were mystified by our solar system. Yeah, they knew the sun rose and set every day, and they knew the moon was, another body that they would see most days, but their world of science was very, very small, okay? When you consider that things like the vaccinations for smallpox and the discovery of penicillin and all of those things that we take for granted, the vaccinations for measles and mumps and all of those things, they've all happened in less than the last 100 years, We're talking 325 years ago when we're talking about Salem, Massachusetts. So we're talking about a very limited world, a world with very limited knowledge, okay? Now, again, I explained some of this in the lesson, but I want to make sure you get it. The Puritans came to this country and landed at Plymouth Rock because they wanted to practice their own religion. As a result, they founded very much of a religious-based society, okay? Now, that first year, as I say in the lesson, half of them died Many of them starved to death because they could see fish jumping out of the water in Cape Cod, but they didn't know how to catch them. And of course, they landed here on November 11th. Ironically, that's my wife's birthday. They landed here on November 11th, and so it was way too late to even think about growing anything. And the way that they got by initially was they saw a pack of Native Americans, and they saw these Native Americans traveling around and burying some ears of corn. And they did that because they wanted to use that corn for seeds the next year. Okay, so that's why they were burying them. Well, the Puritans, who didn't really have much in the way of food, they had brought some supplies with them, but obviously not enough. So they dug those up and they ate them. Well, you know what happens when you eat too much corn. First of all, people get dysentery. Okay. So that's not good. So they were weakened by that. They were weakened by their illness. They didn't really know how to hunt yet until some of the Native Americans taught them how to hunt and helped them a little bit. But life was really tough for those people. So at the end of that first year, the governor said, we're changing everything from this all for one and one for all world to every family gets its own plot of land, every family can do for itself. Now, when you think about it, if I said to you, 3 of you are going to get graded on the work that you turn in as a team, you know what's going to happen. One person, the most conscientious person, is going to do the most work, and the others will just kind of go along for the ride. Okay? Well, that's what it was like that first year. The really hard-working people were willing to work hard, but, there's always, in every group, there is a significant portion that won't work hard until they have to. And so that's part of the reason why half of them died also. And that's the reason why the governor changed their whole society from this plot of land is for your family, this plot of land is for your family, this plot of land is for your family. And when you're working for your family, you're going to work a lot harder than when you're working for the whole community. It's human nature. So they started to thrive. But the background to all of this, remember, their coming here was so they could practice their own religion. So God was tied into this. Work hard, get ahead for the greater glory of God. The more successful they were, in a sense, the more God was showing his favor upon him. Well, as time went on and their society got better, that religious fervor toned down a little bit. But then, just before 1690, it got re-inflamed. The people started thinking about, whoa, wait a minute, we said this is what we're coming for. And so they started to act like religion was really important to them again, okay? They started to make sure they looked like they were really religious people. And that's what really bugged Hawthorne. Hawthorne felt that whole society was hypocritical, that they really hadn't gone back to their God, to God, to their religion, but they wanted to make it look like they did for the sake of appearances, okay? So that's a big part of the basis of Young Goodman Brown. In Young Goodman Brown, it's an intense story, it's an intense story, it's an intense story. Goodman Brown travels to a witch's Sabbath, okay? That's where he's going. And he meets people along the way that are a part of his life, okay? Have been a part of his life. He makes sure they don't see him because he's embarrassed to be there, but he's shocked by what he finds, like his catechism teacher on the way to the witch's Sabbath, okay? And the minister and the deacon on their way to the witch's Sabbath. Except that the person he's traveling with is the devil, and the devil is the master of all lies. Does he really see any of these people? We don't know, but the devil makes him think he does. Ultimately, he gets to the witch's Sabbath, and he is shocked that the good shrank not from the wicked. I hit the thing too hard. See, I got to keep moving. Nuts.
Let's start over?
Yeah, I think so.
Can't just continue?
No. Unfortunately. That's frustrating. So frustrating. So frustrating. Where'd it go? Wait a minute. Where is it? Come on. Here we go. Oh, it's still running. It's still running. Oh, yeah, it's still running. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay. So he's shocked that the good shrank not from the wicked. And everybody in the town is there. Okay. Now, in this week's assignment, there is a question for you to answer. Okay. And the question comes from when Goodman Brown is on his way home from this witch's Sabbath, or right after the witch's Sabbath. Okay. Make sure you read the whole story thoroughly and then answer that question carefully in, again, your typical 5-paragraph essay. Okay, that's what we're doing. Sorry about the little thing here. I thought somehow I killed the video, but it looks like it's still running, which is all good. That means I don't have to do it again. So, enjoy my fireplace here as you watch the video, and you know where to get in touch with me.